Welcome to YGTV and YG One-on-One, written by FlexScripts. I'm your host, Paul M. Neuberger, CEO and founder of the Young Guns movement. On YG One-on-One, I bring CEOs, business leaders, and more to the set right here at Serendipity Labs to discuss who they are, what they do, and how they got there. YG One-on-One, written by FlexScripts, is just one of the 4 shows here on YGTV, our very own channel, designed to help you grow and succeed in your career, business, and life. If you haven't yet clicked the subscribe button, what are you waiting for? Don't miss a single episode of YGTV. If you're on the go, you can also listen to this episode on the Young Guns podcast. My guest today is Matt Neumann, CEO of Neumann Companies. Matt has a demonstrated history in the real estate industry with expertise in negotiation, sales, construction, and strategic positioning. If you will, please join me in welcoming Matt Neumann here on YG One-on-One after this short break. If you're a CEO, listen up. Odds are you're paying too much for your employee benefit pharmacy spend. How do I know? I work with FlexScripts. They're the PBM police, delivering their average client 15 to 20% savings on their pharmacy benefits. Think how much money that is. FlexScripts makes sure your PBM keeps their promises and meets your guarantees. And if they don't, FlexScripts holds them accountable and gets you what you deserve. Stop paying too much for your pharmacy benefits. Get FlexScripts, the PBM police, on your side. Start the conversation today at flexscripts.com. That's flexscripts.com.
For more than 80% of families, today's medical billing practices are confusing. At HPS, our goal is to improve the healthcare experience for the patient by making medical bill payments less stressful. In Wisconsin, that's all made possible by our comprehensive independent healthcare provider network. We simplify billing and lower costs for everyone involved in healthcare and offer various ways for individuals to pay without breaking the bank.
So today's guest is Matt Neumann, CEO at Neumann Companies. Matt, wonderful to have you on the show, brother.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's get right after it. I mean, one of the things that I've admired about you for a while is you are a driven guy. Where does that drive come from, would you say?
You know, I've always been a really competitive person. So I don't know if you'd say I was born with it or what, but at the end of the day, I'm just a naturally super competitive person. As a kid, that manifested itself in sports, naturally, as you would expect. But even academics, I was always just a competitive person. And so when I got out of academics and eventually peaked out at sports at about age 5, no, just kidding. But when I stopped playing sports, it was like, I got to use this competitive nature for something. And so it just naturally flowed into business. And it even transitioned further when I got married and started having kids. All of a sudden that drive was for a purpose. It wasn't just for fulfillment of competitive nature that I have. It was for my family, for my kids, and now ultimately for my community and for my team that I work with every day. So that's what it's all about for me.
So what does competition for you look like? Is it competition against yourself? Are you competing against other companies, other executives? I mean, what does that mean, competition?
You know, I haven't thought about that question, Paul. That's a good question. Who am I competing with? I mean, at the end of the day, every industry, so we're in home building and land development and solar development, and we're involved with a few other things too, but those are our core businesses. So we have competition, obviously, in each of those industry segments, and winning to me looks like winning deals, winning opportunities. But more specifically, I think winning the opportunity to work with the team that we have, meaning attracting employees, high quality, high performing employees to our business, and retaining those employees with our business as they grow in their careers. To me, that's competition, that's winning, because I know if we can find and retain and grow with the best team members, we're going to have the best businesses in our industry segments. So to me, that's competition, that's winning. But don't get me wrong, I love the art of a deal. It doesn't matter if it's real estate or solar or what. I like winning deals, it's fun, and I can't stand losing deals.
Why? Why do you like winning so much? What is it about winning? What is it about attracting that top talent? What is it about closing that big deal that just gets your juices revved up, would you say?
It might be that I dislike losing more than I like winning.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But what is it that gets my juices flowing? I don't know, Paul. I think it's just, it feels good to win. It feels good to be successful. At the end of the day, it feels good to have great team members on our team that I'm working with every single day. And it feels good to win deals. And it's hard to lose. It's frustrating to lose. Mm-hmm. So I think it's probably natural for any competitor. Like you want to win a lot more than you lose. And we've been fortunate enough to win in a lot of different ways. And it's been a lot of fun getting here.
Would you say Matt Neumann is ever satisfied? Are you ever satisfied?
No, but content. I mean, I'm content with where we are, but at the same time, I'm always looking for the next thing because it's fun. If I'm not growing, I feel like I'm going the other direction. And I don't mean in terms of size. I mean, if I'm not mentally challenged, if I'm not mentally growing, if I'm not trying to attract new talent to our team, if I'm not chasing some new deal, I feel like I'm going backwards. And so it's not about getting bigger or about winning more deals necessarily, but I feel like if I'm not moving forward, I'm moving backward. For me, there's no sitting still. Mm-hmm. Sitting still to me is losing. And I say to my wife sometimes, I can do that when I'm 6 feet under, but I'm not going to do that right now. Mm-hmm. I prefer not to do that anytime soon, though.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Is there so at the end of the day, that all sounds awesome. But is there a potential drawback to that? Is there a potential drawback of never being satisfied? Is there a potential drawback of always going on to the next thing? And the reason I ask, Matt, because this is therapy for me. I want to hear this from you because I struggle with this from time to time.
Yep.
As we were talking about before the lights came on here, I'm the owner of 4 businesses. Every day is like me being on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And sometimes when I get that big win or I get that big deal, I'm satisfied for about 5 seconds and then I'm on to something else. Is there a potential drawback to living life like that? And if so, how do you manage those potential risks while also not losing what gives you a competitive edge?
Yeah, there's for sure drawbacks. And I talk to my wife about this actually a lot and on a consistent basis. I think the biggest drawback is as you go from thing to thing to thing, whether it's deal to deal to deal or whether it's company to company to company and trying to grow and find new opportunities and do new things, you find that, I found anyway, that it is hard to retain the same relationships you had yesterday or yesteryear or years prior. There are some people that want to grow and are excited to grow with you and are driven in the same way you are, and there's other people that aren't. And it doesn't make one better than the other, they're just different. And so I think the thing I've struggled with the most is sometimes relationships that you had, whether it's working with certain team members or certain friendships or whatever it might be, as you progress through life, those things change. And I think some of that is natural, but with an entrepreneur that's constantly creating new things, I think that's the biggest challenge because I'm a very relationship-driven person, and I would like to retain every relationship I have right now, today, tomorrow. But the reality is it's hard to grow into tomorrow and still retain all the relationships you had today and the ones you had yesterday. So that to me is the biggest challenge. At the end of the day, I guess I've just come to peace with the fact that you can't be everything to everyone all the time. And at the end of the day, if I'm not moving forward, the people that are working with me are not moving forward. And so I view this as sort of a leadership obligation to keep trying to grow, keep trying to do new things so that all of the team members that work with us can also continue to grow for those that want to, because some of them do. Mm-hmm. And if I don't find ways to provide those opportunities, they're going to go grow somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I want to keep those team members on our team.
Yeah. And one of the things as I listen to you talk that I think about a lot is I'm very interested in the subject of fear. And that might be kind of like a sick thing for me to say, but fear is such a powerful emotion if you really think about it. And I do believe that success always lies exactly on the other side of your fear. I think there's really two buckets of people. One, the bucket of people where they use fear as a wall, a barrier. They will go right up to the edge of their fear and then stop or regress. Or there's some people that actually use fear as fuel, where I'm going to feel it, I'm going to plow through anyway. This is going to get me to where I need to go. So with fear as a backdrop, as a CEO and entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff, I have to imagine fear is, in some respect, an ever-present companion, some days maybe more than others. What are you scared of, or what fears do you have, Matt, and what do you do with those fears to live a successful life overall?
Another interesting question, Paul. I try not to dwell on fear, because the fact of the matter is, if I get up and look in the mirror every day and say, I'm responsible for what I feel I'm actually responsible for, I would be scared. Like, for real, that's to think about the number of employees we have, the businesses we have, the subcontractor relationships we employ, the families that we build homes for, the businesses we provide energy for in our solar company. There's a lot of responsibility there, but at the same time, if I sat there and dwelled on that, I would just scare myself into a corner and say I shouldn't do this anymore. And the reality is, it's not all on me. Like, we didn't get to where we are because Matt Neumann is a great leader. That's not how we got to where we are. We got to where we are because there were a lot of people that shared a vision that we're going to be great at what we do. We're going to be excellent companies. We're going to be best in class in our industries. And they've chosen to be on our team, and they've helped get us there. Frankly, they've driven us to this point. So I guess the way that I overcome any of that fear, first of all, is don't think too much about it. And second of all, I show up at the office and I look around and I go, we got this. I'm not worried about it. Because even if I get hit by a bus driving back from this conversation, our team's gonna be just fine. It's gonna be hard on my family, but our team's gonna be just fine. They'll figure it out. So that's, I would say, how I overcome fear, and it is a motivator too. I mean, at the end of the day, you just keep moving forward.
Well,
because your only other option is going backward. We just talked about that too.
Absolutely. Well, let me dive a little bit deeper into this. I want to keep you on the hot seat for an extra second or two. One of the things that I love about the guests that we have on YG One-on-One is we don't just talk in high-level platitudes. We actually give our audience practitioner-based best advice and best practices on how to live some of the things we talked about. So let's say somebody's watching this, they're feeling fear. Everything you said, I just don't think about it, or I try not to think about it. Well, what if they're not having that same degree of success? They are obsessed about it. They can't just shake it off. And they hear what you're saying, okay, Matt, just don't think about it. Well, I'm trying not to think about it, and that thought pops in my head from time to time.
Then it makes me think about it more.
Then it makes me think
right?
about it more,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So if somebody is in the throes of fear, if somebody's not able just to not think about those thoughts from time to time, what advice would you give to them on how to cope with and eventually overcome some of those things that are filling their mind with fear, dread, doubt, whatever the case may be?
I would ask them a question, and I would say, where's your source of peace and comfort and stability? So if you get too fearful, I would tell you it's probably because your life is out of balance. You're focusing too much on whatever it is that's driving that fear. So if it's business, for example, because that's what we're sitting here talking about, and you're scared about a big decision you have to make, or a termination that you have to do with a team member that's important to your organization, or maybe it's making a decision on a new hire that you're not totally sure is the right fit, but whatever that fear is that you're facing, you're probably putting too much of your time, you're imbalanced in your life. And what I mean by that is I work very hard, and again, this is something my wife and I talk about a lot, because as a driven entrepreneur, it's hard to not get absorbed in your business. But I have 4 little kids. They're 4 through 10 years old. They're my life, and my wife, of course. And so at the end of the day, like, they're my stability. If I completely fail in business, at least at this stage of my kids' life, I'm still gonna be their hero, because that's the stage of life they're at. They look at me as that person. Now, eventually they'll figure out I'm really not that great. But right now, they still think that. So my stability is making sure that I have good balance between my work and my home life. And as long as I have that, nothing I do at work scares me that much, because I know I'm still gonna come home to my wife and my kids, and they're my source of joy, they're my source of stability. So I would say if someone is really worried about something at work, check your balance. Make sure that you have kind of air in all your tires, and that you don't have 3 flat tires over here and your only tire with air in it is your brain time and work, and everything else in your life is taking a back seat to it. So put some other things that are more important in life in the front seat. Might be your health. A lot of times I think the reason people when you have fear and stress in work, I think it leads to health complications. And I'm sure you've seen it, I've seen it in business owners and entrepreneurs, and all of a sudden that becomes their focus because they have to fix their health in order to perform in business. And it's the same kind of thing. Make sure you're living a balanced life, eating healthy, working out, being active, spending time with your family, investing time in your friendships. That is the way I think you can de-stress your work life.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And the one thing that I know is important to you that you did not necessarily mention on that list is faith. So how has your faith allowed you to overcome some of these fears? How has your faith allowed you to have that healthy balance where you can still be that hard-charging, successful entrepreneur, but you're still able to find peace. You're still able to enjoy the smaller things in life. Talk about your faith for a little bit and the role that's played in making you who you are today.
That actually makes business easy, from my opinion. And the reason I say that is nothing that I have is mine. Nothing I created was actually created by me. And none of it's going to come with me when I'm dead. None of it. So for me, it's a pretty simple philosophy. Like I didn't create myself. I didn't create whatever I'm managing today. It's not mine. I'm managing it anyway. My job is to be a good steward with the resources we've been blessed with. And when I say resources, I'm not talking money. I'm talking people and relationships and the businesses we lead. I'm just trying to steward them the best I can so that they're in a better place when I'm no longer there. And that's what I feel like my obligation is. That's what Jesus did when he walked this earth. He invested in relationships and people. He wasn't trying to build financial resources. He was trying to build people to be better leaders when he wasn't there. Now, no one's ever going to be a better leader than he was, but that's the way I look at it. It wasn't mine when I started. It's not mine today. It's not going to be mine later. I'm just trying to manage it the best I can. And that actually takes a lot of pressure off because I do feel like although God has blessed each of us with a certain amount of talents and capabilities, and it's our obligation out of respect for our relationship with him, what he's given us to utilize that. At the end of the day, if something that I do fails, I'm not going to look and be like, well, God, you did that. Like, that was your decision. No, I'm going to look at it and take it hard, but at the same time, that wasn't meant to be. That's okay. And I'm going to move on to the next thing. So that's my ultimate source of peace. I realize not everybody necessarily has that. For me, that's what I have. But I also think when you combine that with the biggest blessing he gave me here on earth is my wife and my kids, it makes everything else kind of smaller and not such a big deal.
Right. No, and I know that answer is in response to a direct question that I asked you about that, but do you think there's a stigma out there in some way, shape, or form in the business community with maybe executives or leaders that believe like you believe, that feel as strongly about their faith, if not more so than you? Is there this stigma where they can't necessarily bring that into the workplace, where they can't be their true authentic self, where they can't maybe share with others what makes them their unique self, or is that not maybe a big deal from what you've seen?
I don't know about a stigma, Paul. I think it's just some people are more concerned about offending people with their thought process. My opinion is, and I think everyone in our companies who's interacted with me or any of our trade partners or whatever, hopefully they know based on the way I treat them where I stand, or they've heard me actually talk about it openly. But I'm not pushing that on anyone. I'm not saying you have to be a Christian. That's not who I am as a person. I hope that what they see in me is something that they look at and go, wow, he has a peace of mind. It must come from somewhere. Where does that come from? Like, where does he get that from? And they search it out on their own. It's not for me to push on them. I think if I were trying to advocate for it and push people to Christianity, that's different. But that's not what I'm here to do. It's like politics, which we probably shouldn't talk about, but we can if you want. People probably know where I stand. It doesn't mean that I disrespect their opinion if it's different than mine. It's okay to have different opinions. But at the end of the day, this is where my base is, where my core is. And if you would like to talk to me about it, you're welcome to. But at the same time, you're welcome to believe whatever you'd like to.
Yeah.
But you know where I stand.
Well, one of the things that I like about this is since we started this conversation, with every word that you articulate, you're making me look better and better for having you on this program, because one of the reasons that I really wanted you as a guest is you've always struck me as somebody who is immensely authentic. I think when people know you, when people get to build relationships with you, they know where Matt Neumann stands. Maybe like you said, you're not pushing it on them,
right?
But this is who I am, this is what I believe, and you take it or leave it. So with authenticity as a backdrop to this question, do you think the leadership ranks in society today have an authenticity problem? Do you think leaders more often than not are their true authentic self? Or do you think they're wearing a mask or maybe going against what their better judgment tells them from time to time? I'm speaking in generalities, obviously, but talk to me about authenticity in the leadership ranks and whether or not you think it exists enough.
I think it does, but there's an element, I mean, maybe what you're talking about here is being kind of politically correct in the way that you communicate with people. I'm not the type of leader that is going to work too hard to be politically correct, but I am going to work very hard to be sensitive and aware of what I'm communicating, how I'm communicating it. So it's not that I'm going to hold back my belief system from a conversation, but I am going to be particularly aware of how I deliver that belief. So I guess maybe that's too general too, but what I would tell you is I'm not necessarily going to force someone to pray with me before a meal at lunch, okay? Because that might be uncomfortable for them. Mm-hmm. But they might see me bow my head and pray to myself. And those are different ways of delivering a similar message. They're certainly welcome to pray on their own if they'd like to. I'm not going to make it awkward and force them to pray with me, because that can be kind of weird. Mm-hmm. I think it could make someone feel uncomfortable. But rather, if before I have lunch, they just see me bow my head and pray, that's okay. And that's not going to offend anybody, I don't think. And if it does, well, then they're probably the one on the extreme, not me. Mm-hmm. So that's okay. But related to authenticity, I just think people need to be who they are. And I think we need to not be quite so concerned about offending people, and maybe just a little bit more real about who we are, and then agree to disagree. It's okay if you and I see the world differently. Mm-hmm. We can still stand up and shake hands and respect each other. And our world didn't get to where we are with everyone having the same opinion. Mm-hmm. It just didn't. And it doesn't drive change either. So I think some of it is healthy. Having said that, there's a lot of unhealthy dialogue too that exists in our society today that's very sad to see. And I just wish that we could move to a point where we all could respectfully disagree with each other and still respect that the other person is still someone that intends well and is a good human being.
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about some of the unhealthy dialogue. So whether it be internally, whether it be social media, whether it be just anything that's put out there for public consumption, how has your organization been able to navigate that? I have to imagine Neumann Companies to some degree is tied into politics. I mean, political decisions impact your business, elections impact your business, legislation impacts your business. So when you have an organization that's so dependent on politics, politics is a hot button issue for sure. You're a man of conviction and beliefs and everything else. I mean, that can be a kind of a combustible mix. Plus you got employees, now you got social media. How has Neumann Companies been able to successfully navigate this very interesting time we find ourselves in?
Well, I don't know that we have, I don't know that I would consider us having navigated it successfully, but we are still here. We did have a great year last year, and I think last year, 2020, is going to be a year I believe that is remembered as the biggest year of dissension we've ever had in America. I mean, we had 3 very significant things that were pulling our country apart last year. Obviously with the coronavirus, and then you had a very contentious election with a president that was not really a team builder. He was my way or you're wrong. And then whether you agree or disagree, there wasn't much in between. And then you combine with that all of the racial tension that existed. And I think still does exist in many ways. And I don't know that we navigated it successfully. I will tell you, I did not engage in a lot of the conversations that maybe would have been super contentious in that way. I just feel like people need to be adults and make their own decisions and form their own opinions. And I'm not there as a leader of an organization to tell them how to think or who to vote for or whether they should wear a mask or not, or whether they should get vaccinated or not. I'm not there to tell them whether they think that the racial issues that we're facing as a country are totally real and warranted and that's the right way to respond, or whether some of them are being overplayed and overstated by media. Like, everyone's gonna make their own decisions. I'm an adult trying to figure out how to manage my marriage and my family as a grown man. Every other person in our organization has the same obligation for their family, or whatever their dynamic is as an individual. And so I just don't believe that's really my role. My role is to try to run a great organization that people are passionate about, that they want to show up and work for every day, and they can form those opinions on their own.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is going to be a loaded question as well too, and it's got a little general, but I would welcome your thoughts on this. I mean, what role does corporate America today have or should have in some of these issues? I mean, I know you're going to have some people that are going to agree, you're going to have some people that don't. I know when Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game out of the state of Georgia, people were saying, well, yay, good for Major League Baseball, or no, you shouldn't have done this. And I mean, what role does corporate America have, in your opinion, to take a stand on some of these issues? And if it's, well, they have some role, I guess, how do you pick and choose which issues to support, which ones to go all in with? I mean, any insight you can share on that would certainly be appreciated.
It's super hard. I don't know what to tell you, Paul. It's really hard. I mean, you think about what the NFL faced, just to use some specific examples, what the NFL faced when a number of its players started kneeling during the national anthem. And I always ask myself, like, what would I have done if I was Roger Goodell in that moment? Like, how would I have responded? What would I have done? Would I have required them to stand? Would I have told them to stay in the locker room? What happens with the pushback that comes from the players in that scenario if you force them to do something that they don't want to do? Can you even force them to do something they don't want to do? Similarly, Major League Baseball, well, the NBA had similar stuff too, with national anthem stuff, and then Major League Baseball with pulling the All-Star game, which I still find absolutely incredible that they did that. I don't know. I think the circumstances are so important to the response. I think the response that those organizations took, it's hard for me to judge it because I wasn't in their shoes. I don't know everything that they knew. I don't know what they could do legally, and what's in all their agreements with their employees and their players in that case, and what they can't do. I know this is really kind of a cop-out answer, but I don't know. I think it totally depends on the situation. And if it were me, would I have required people to respect the flag of the United States of America? Yes. Unequivocally, yes. Now, how would I have done that? I don't know. I might have told them, since you and your team can't agree on this, you need to just stay in the locker room because we're not going to disrespect the flag of the United States of America. I don't know. What I wouldn't have done is allowed some of the dissension that I think played out. When I say wouldn't have allowed, I would have tried to avoid that. I wouldn't have just allowed everyone to make their own decision and do their own thing related to that, because I feel like it created a big divide. And overall, it hurt the organization, it hurt the NFL dramatically, what they went through. But that's easy for me to say because I wasn't sitting in that chair.
Right.
These are hard decisions. These are not things that are easy to navigate. Social media makes it that much harder. And the bigger the organization is and the more the limelight is in that organization, the harder it is.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and I think the theme coming out of your answer there was just the enormity of some of these decisions that leaders and top executives have to make. And I'm guilty of it from time to time. I'll do Monday morning quarterbacking as well. I'll read something in the Wall Street Journal about Coca-Cola doing this for their sensitivity training, or Major League Baseball this, or Roger Goodell that. And sometimes your visceral, instinctive reaction is, well, that was stupid. But I don't know what went into that process. There's always more than meets the eye. So it's kind of with the difficult decision theme in mind. I'm sure you've had to make some very tough decisions over the course of your professional career. What was one of the toughest decisions you've had to make with respect to Neumann Companies, and how did you go about making that decision?
Boy, I think back to kind of a recent change that we went through as an organization and it related to the way we diversified our product types in our home building companies. It was a hard decision because we were, at the time, we had one building company partner. Over the years, we've had multiple building company partnerships. The way we're sort of structured as a business is, while I sit as technically the CEO, the reality is I don't run any of the operations directly. We have an operating president of each business. And a couple years back, we had one building company partnership, and we were working with some other building companies. We were at one partnership, and that company was trying to be excellent at multiple different things, and really was driven to be excellent at multiple different things. And it became challenging because you can't necessarily be everything to everybody inside of one company. And so we made a difficult decision at that time to really break apart our product types and focus one business on one product segment, create another new business, and then bring in another partnership for a third business. And navigating that change, this was in fall of 2018. And I'll never forget that team meeting that we had when we rolled it out. And I was really nervous about how the message was going to be received and how we were going to say this, because one company that was trying to do everything might have felt like something was being taken away from them, opportunities or whatever it was. And there's some significant validity to that. At the same time, it was going to create significant opportunities because we had a new startup that was taking place and we had a new partnership taking place. And so it created a lot of opportunities for people to grow into new positions within these new organizations. Looking back on it now today, a few years later, we've more than doubled in size. It's always a bumpy road. Like, you set a vision, you say, we're going to go from here to here, whether it's growth metrics or whether it's just moving product types or whatever. It's always a bumpy road getting there, and it was, and it had turns and bends along the way. But at the end of the day, I look back and go, we're a much better organization. We are a stronger organization today, having gone through that change. But it was very hard at the time, and it was hard for months to try to make that decision. And then once we made the decision, you do end up doubting yourself at different points in that process. Like, was that really the right thing to do? Should we have done it that way? Could we have done it differently? But at the end of the day, I think we've landed in a good spot, and I think now we're asking ourselves the question, okay, what's next? Where are we going next? Mm-hmm. So, but those decisions are tough. I mean, organizational change, when you're not 100% sure, you might be sure something needs to change, but being sure where you should go with that change can be sometimes the hardest part.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm oversimplifying this, but walk me through Matt Neumann's thought process. It might differ from time to time. Sure, each situation and opportunity is truly unique, but how do you go about making a big decision? I do believe there's an art and or science to that to some degree.
Yep.
What do you think about? What questions do you ask yourself? Who do you consult? I mean, how do you make some of these really difficult decisions on an ongoing, regular basis?
I think you got to start with the why. Like, why do I feel, or why do I sense the need to change, or why do I feel I need to make this decision? Why am I moving this way versus that way? And I think about this a lot. I go for jogs in the morning. I probably don't look like it, but I jog in the morning, not very fast. But when I do, these are often the things I'm asking myself when I'm jogging. I never listen to music when I'm jogging. It's just like my time to kind of free think. And unless you can get a solid answer to the why, I think it's really hard to answer the what or the how or the where or anything else. And so that's what I always try to focus on. And for me, the why behind that decision I was just talking about, related to diversifying product types, was because we have a number of management level team members that are young and passionate and want to grow in their careers. And I felt like unless we modified our organizational structure and broke apart the product types to really be excellent in each of these areas, they were going to be limited in their capacity to grow and their capacity to lead. And so the why for me was all about people. The why, like, why grow a business? It has never been, and it will never be, about chasing a dollar amount, or at least at this point, like, I don't have to report to Wall Street, so it's not like I have people I need to report to there. So it's like the why for me is all about the people. It's all about why, if they're going to grow, then we need to grow, because there's not more opportunities being created if we're not growing. Mm-hmm. And that's what drives me. That's the exciting part of what I do.
Yeah, well, I think you touched on something that I think other executives watching this would be well served to listen to and maybe even implement in their own lives? You had talked about jogging, and yes, it does look like you jog. By the way, you're just way too modest.
Just slow.
Just very,
but I get it
very
done.
slow. Fast walking, perhaps. Yes. But one of the things that you just said that I thought was really intriguing is how you don't listen to music. You're just there with your thoughts. You're processing your thoughts. You're paying attention to the things that are on your mind. And we're synergistic in that area where I believe this world has a busy problem. I mean, we are busying ourselves to death. I mean, there is no white space in our calendar. We are going from point A to point B to point C. We are exhausted. We are overweight. We are tired constantly. We're not taking care of ourselves. And every day you wake up, it's, okay, we got to run this rat race again. And I look at it to say, you know, we are not human doings. We are human beings. And sometimes for us just to sit, to be and to be still, it can really be therapeutic. So for some of these really busy executives that are listening to this interview right now that say, okay, Matt, time to jog. How do you get time to jog? I barely have time to eat lunch. What advice would you give them to say, you know what? This is how you can probably get a little bit more control of your day and be less busy. Any tips or recommendations on that?
Yeah, I mean, anyone says they're too busy to work out, I'm gonna say that's baloney. It's prioritization. You have time to fill your calendar with all the other stuff. So don't tell me you can't fill your calendar with a half-hour, 45-minute workout. It's not true. Mm-hmm. Not only that, I've found for me personally that my time is in the morning. I get up at 5 or 5:30 every single day, and I start out with a little Bible reading that just kind of gets me, like I won't read an email. I won't do social media. I won't do anything until I get up. I pour myself a cup of coffee. I go do my Bible reading. It's probably 10, 15 minutes. That's it. And then I dive in. I'll do a couple of emails or something. If I had left behind those things last night, need to get them out, I'll get them out. Then I go do my workout. And then I find myself ready to face the day. So it's my way of kind of stabilizing my mindset before I get started. And I would say basically every work day, unless I have an early meeting for some reason, and then those days tend to get off the rails for me because I'm not as focused. So that's what I focused on. I know everybody has their own way of doing it. Some people aren't morning people. You and I can't relate to that, but some people aren't, and so it's hard for them to do that in the morning. But at the end of the day, I think if you're not willing to dedicate the time to take care of yourself and take time for yourself, you can't be the best person that you can be and need to be and should be for your family, your friends, your businesses, etc. So fortunately, I have a very understanding, supportive wife in that regard, so she understands. And for me, it's not just workouts, it's screwing around too. I screw around a lot. I have a lot of fun. We were talking about Bucks games, doesn't matter, Packer games, Brewer games. I like to screw around. I like to have fun. I play basically any outdoor sport that exists. I love skiing. I love hunting. I'm like a serial hobbyist. And so I think that time for me is what allows me to be who I need to be for my family and for my business. And I think that's super important for any entrepreneur. Just don't get too, we talked about balance before, don't get too overweighted on one side, because when you do, you're leaving something else behind. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important to me.
Yeah, well said. And I'm sure you'll be one of the first people to admit that time is going by very quickly. You've got 4 beautiful children. It's probably hard for you to believe that they're as old as they are right now.
Crazy.
I mean, you blink and they're just 3 or 4 years older. So as time continues to go on, as you continue to achieve more, as you get older, as life is passing us by, if we get sentimental for a moment here, in the final analysis, when all is said and done, what do you want Matt Neumann's legacy to be? What do you want people to say about you when you leave the workplace, leave this earth? I mean, what would really make your soul happy if people said, you know what, when I think of Matt Neumann, I think of what?
Fun, passionate, energy. Those are the types of words I hope people use as descriptions of me today and in the future. I think they're all going to know where I stand from a faith perspective and a family perspective. I believe they will. The people that really know me will know that. But I hope that I'm an energizing person for them to be around. I hope I'm a fun person for them to be around. I hope I'm someone that drives other people to want to do more, be more, expect more of themselves. That's why I don't want to sit still. I don't want to sit still because I feel like if I slow down, that's giving a whole bunch of other people permission to slow down too. And I really enjoy moving fast, thinking fast, enjoying life, living life to its fullest. We're only here, you talk about our kids in the blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. We're only here for the blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to have fun. I want to be passionate about whatever it is I'm doing. And I hope people see that and realize that that's really true. And if I'm not passionate about it, I better go find something else to do. Yeah. But I typically live at a pretty fast pace and really enjoy what I'm doing, and I hope people around me enjoy being around me, and I certainly enjoy being around them.
Yeah, well, just to take two words out of the answer that you gave, not only was it fun to share the stage with you here today, our time together went by in a blink of an eye. So, Matt, I really do appreciate it. Thank you for not only being here, but sharing your words of wisdom. It was an inspiration for me. I know the audience is going to feel the same. Appreciate all that you're doing, and hope to see you again at a Young Guns function sometime soon.
You got it. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
You bet. What an enlightening conversation we had with Matt here at Serendipity Labs on YG One-on-One, written by FlexScripts and sponsored by Health Payment Systems. Matt had some thought-provoking answers, but now I've got a question for you. Who do you want to see on this very program? YG One-on-One is about bringing together free thinkers and luminaries who can help educate and inspire you to think unconventionally and break the rules of business. Kindly drop your suggestion in the comments below or on any one of the Young Guns social media channels, and there's a lot of them. Speaking of social media, just a friendly reminder to kindly follow the Young Guns movement on Facebook, LinkedIn, and also right here on YouTube. We also distribute our shows as podcasts, so go ahead and give us a listen during your commute, workday, or wherever you so choose. Thanks again to Matt Neumann, CEO of Newman Companies, for sitting down with me here today on YG One-on-One. As always, I'm Paul M. Neuberger, and we'll see you next time.